William Bill Harrison prided himself on precision. As an accountant, his meticulous attention to detail had built him a successful firm with a roster of loyal clients. At 56, he had what many would consider a well-ordered life, a successful career, a comfortable home, and a 25-year marriage to Diane, a high school guidance counselor whose warmth complemented his analytical nature. Their life followed a predictable rhythm that Bill found comforting. Weekdays were devoted to work, Friday evenings meant dinner with the same group of friends they'd known for decades, and Sundays were reserved for visiting their son Andrew and his young family. Bill appreciated the stability, the careful balance of professional achievement and personal contentment. It was during tax season, always his busiest time of year, when Bill first noticed the discrepancy. He was organizing their personal financial documents when he spotted unusual charges on their joint credit card statement. 3 hotel charges in a neighboring town where they hadn't stayed, restaurant bills for establishments they'd never visited. As he dug deeper, he discovered unexplained withdrawals from their shared savings account, small enough to go unnoticed individually, but substantial when viewed collectively. "That's odd," he murmured to himself, his accountant's mind automatically calculating the total, $4,782 over the past 6 months. Bill's first thought was identity theft. He checked for other unauthorized transactions, but everything else seemed normal. The charges appeared deliberate, not random. He noticed they often coincided with Diane's increasingly frequent girls' weekends and late counseling sessions at the high school. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Bill chopping vegetables with the same precision he applied to balancing ledgers, he casually mentioned the credit card charges. "I was going through our statements and noticed some hotels I don't recognize. In Westbrook? Were you at a conference I forgot about?" Diane's hand paused briefly as she stirred the pasta sauce. "Oh, that. Yes, there was a counselor's retreat. I thought I mentioned it." Bill nodded, noting her slight hesitation, the way her eyes didn't quite meet his. In his profession, he'd learned to recognize when numbers didn't add up. Now he was beginning to suspect that something in his carefully balanced life wasn't adding up either. Later that night, while Diane slept, Bill returned to his home office. He pulled up their bank statements again, this time noting dates and patterns. The withdrawals often occurred on Tuesdays, the day Diane claimed to have late counseling sessions. There were also charges at a jewelry store and a men's boutique just before Christmas gifts he'd never received. Bill sat back in his chair, the blue light of his computer screen illuminating his face in the darkened room. After 25 years of marriage, he knew Diane's habits, her routines. These discrepancies suggested a pattern he didn't want to acknowledge. But Bill Harrison had built his reputation on facing financial realities, however unpleasant. Now it seemed he would need to apply that same unflinching analysis to his marriage. Bill approached his suspicions with the same methodical precision he applied to a complex tax audit. He created a spreadsheet, listing dates, times, and unexplained expenses. He cross-referenced these with Diane's stated whereabouts. The discrepancies formed a pattern too consistent to ignore. Macum. The next step was to review their phone records. Bill found numerous calls to an unknown number, often late in the evening or during Diane's supposed counseling sessions. The calls sometimes lasted over an hour. He checked their shared digital calendar, noting several appointments Diane had added, then later modified or deleted altogether. Just gathering information, he told himself, trying to maintain professional detachment as if this were merely another client case. But each new discovery felt like a physical blow. One Tuesday evening, Bill told Diane he needed to work late. Instead, he parked his sedan a block from the high school and waited. At 6:30, the time Diane's counseling session should have been ending, he watched her leave the building. Rather than heading home, she drove to Bellamy's, an upscale restaurant on the other side of town. Bill followed at a distance, his heart pounding in a way it never did during the most stressful tax audits. He watched through the restaurant window as Diane greeted a man with a kiss that was decidedly more than friendly. The man was tall, silver-haired, well-dressed, someone Bill had never seen before. Through discreet inquiries and a search of the high school's parent directory, Bill identified the man as Paul Winters, a divorced investment banker whose daughter had graduated from Diane's school 2 years earlier. Further research revealed that Paul served on the school's fundraising committee, a connection that would have given him regular contact with the guidance department. "I need to be certain," Bill told himself, though the evidence was mounting. He contacted John Michaels, a private investigator recommended by a colleague who had handled similar situations for clients. "I'll need comprehensive surveillance," Bill explained during their initial meeting, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomach. "Phone records, photographs, recordings if possible. I want to know how long this has been happening and how serious it is." Michaels nodded, his expression professionally neutral. "I understand, Mr. Harrison. These situations are never easy. But you're doing the right thing by getting facts before taking action." Over the next 3 weeks, Bill maintained his routine, treating Diane with the same polite consideration as always. He noted that she seemed more distracted than usual, often checking her phone and smiling at messages. Twice she mentioned weekend workshops that weren't on her official school calendar. When Michaels delivered his report, the evidence was irrefutable. The affair had been ongoing for nearly a year. There were photographs of Diane and Paul at restaurants, entering a hotel, walking hand in hand in a park 2 towns over. Most damning were the audio recordings from the hotel room, captured through legal means, Michaels assured him. "I can't keep living like this," Diane's voice said clearly on the recording. "Sneaking around, lying to Bill." "I know, sweetheart," Paul replied. "But we need to be smart about this. You said yourself that Bill handles all your finances. We need to plan carefully before you make any moves." "He's a good man," Diane said, her voice softening. "He doesn't deserve this." "No one's saying he isn't a good man," Paul responded, "but you deserve to be happy too. We deserve our chance." Bill stopped the recording, unable to listen to more. The clinical detachment he'd maintained throughout his investigation finally cracked. He sat in his office, staring at the spreadsheets and reports spread across his desk. The undeniable evidence of his marriage's failure. Bill spent 3 days organizing his findings. He created a comprehensive dossier that included financial records, timeline of events, photographs, and transcripts of the recorded conversations between Diane and Paul. He approached this task with the same attention to detail he would give a complex audit report for his most important client. On Thursday evening, after their usual quiet dinner, Bill cleared the table and placed a manila folder in front of Diane. "It's a report I've compiled," Bill replied, his voice calm and measured. "I think you should review it carefully." Diane opened the folder, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock as she realized what she was seeing. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages, moving through the methodically organized evidence of her betrayal. "I believe the documentation speaks for itself," Bill responded, maintaining the professional tone he used with clients. "But I'm willing to hear your explanation." Diane's initial denials crumbled quickly in the face of such thorough evidence. Her shoulders slumped as she pushed the folder away. "I began noticing financial discrepancies approximately 6 weeks ago," Bill answered. "The investigation has been ongoing for 3 weeks." "Investigation," Diane repeated, a bitter edge to her voice. "Of course you would approach this like a balance sheet." For the first time, Bill's composed facade showed cracks. "How else should I have approached discovering that my wife of 25 years has been having an affair? Should I have confronted you with suspicions? Given you the opportunity to hide the evidence? Create more elaborate lies?" Tears streamed down Diane's face. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said. "Paul and I met at a fundraiser last year. We started talking, and it was just different, exciting, unpredictable. You're so contained, Bill, so measured. Every day is planned, every conversation predictable. I felt like I was suffocating in all this certainty." Bill stood up, needing to move. "So rather than talk to me, your husband, you decided to lie, to steal from our accounts, to betray not just me, but our entire family." "But you did," Bill replied, his voice finally breaking. "Deliberately, repeatedly, for nearly a year, you looked me in the eye day after day and lied. You took money we saved together and spent it on hotel rooms with him." "Page 17, Bill said, gesturing to the folder. "You told him you were planning to leave me once you figured out the finances. Were you going to blindside me with that too?" Bill nodded, gathering the folder. "Well, I'm not confused anymore. I'll be sleeping in my office tonight. I suggest you use this time to consider what you want to do next." As he walked away, Diane called after him. "Bill, please, can we talk about this? Really talk?" He paused at the doorway. "I've found that when the numbers are this clear, there's very little left to discuss. In his office, Bill heard Diane's muffled voice as she called Paul, panic evident in her tone. He sat at his desk, opened a new spreadsheet, and began making notes about next steps: apartment rentals, attorney recommendations, financial separations. The familiar process of organizing information provided a small comfort as his personal life collapsed around him. Bill found an apartment 3 blocks from his office, a modern one-bedroom with large windows and none of the memories that now haunted his home. He moved in with minimal belongings, clothes, personal items, and the financial documents necessary for the divorce proceedings. At work, he maintained his usual efficiency, though his partners noticed the subtle changes: the earlier arrivals, later departures, and lunches eaten alone at his desk. They respected his privacy, understanding from their own long marriages that some storms must be weathered privately. The most difficult task was telling Andrew. Bill invited his son to lunch at a quiet restaurant, away from the grandchildren and the possibility of interruption. "Your mother and I are separating," he said simply, after they'd ordered. "I've moved out of the house." Andrew's fork clattered against his plate. "What? Why? You guys have always been so solid." Bill took a measured breath. "Your mother has been involved with someone else for nearly a year, a man named Paul Winters. The relationship appears to be serious." "Mom is cheating?" Andrew's voice rose in disbelief. "That doesn't make any sense." "Nevertheless, it's happening," Bill replied. "I've confirmed it beyond any reasonable doubt." "Of course you have," Andrew said, a hint of his mother's earlier criticism in his voice. "Did you create a spreadsheet of her betrayal?" "Actually, yes," Bill admitted, without defensiveness. "When you've built your life around someone for 25 years, you don't dismantle it based on hunches." Andrew's anger deflated. "I'm sorry, Dad. That was unfair. This is just shocking." "For me as well," Bill acknowledged. "I'm not telling you this to turn you against your mother. She's still your mother, and she loves you. But I thought you deserved to know the truth, rather than whatever narrative might emerge." "I've consulted with Patricia Lawson," Bill replied, naming one of the city's most respected divorce attorneys. "The process will take time, but I intend to be fair. Your mother will keep the house, at least initially. I've already adjusted my will to ensure your inheritance remains protected." Andrew shook his head. "I don't care about the money, Dad. I care about you. Are you okay?" For the first time, Bill's careful composure faltered. "I'm managing," he said finally, "one day at a time." In the weeks that followed, Diane made several attempts at reconciliation. She came to his office unannounced, called late at night, and even enlisted friends to advocate on her behalf. Her relationship with Paul had ended abruptly when he realized the complications of her marriage ending were more than he'd bargained for. "I made a terrible mistake," she told Bill during one of her visits. "We could go to counseling, start over." Bill regarded her with the same careful assessment he gave complex financial problems. "The trust deficit is too great," he said finally. "Some balances can't be restored once they've been depleted." "That's it? 25 years dismissed like a bad investment?" Diane asked, tears streaming down her face. "No," Bill replied quietly. 25 years honored by not accepting less than they were worth." As the divorce proceedings advanced, Bill found himself navigating unexpected social complexities. His firm's annual tax season party, usually hosted at his and Diane's home, presented the first major hurdle. After consideration, Bill decided to maintain the tradition, hosting at his apartment building's community room. The evening was awkward despite his careful planning. Clients and colleagues offered condolences, with varying degrees of tact, making it clear that his personal situation had become common knowledge. "Bill, I was so sorry to hear about you and Diane," said Margaret Wilson, a longtime client. "My sister went through something similar last year. These things happen even in the best marriages." "Thank you for your concern," Bill replied, the phrase becoming his standard response. Later, his partner David pulled him aside. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," he said. "If Elaine did to me what Diane did to you, I'd be a mess." David looked uncomfortable. "Just that she was involved with Paul Winters for quite some time. Apparently his ex-wife has been quite vocal about it in her social circle." The realization that strangers were discussing his marriage felt like another betrayal. Bill excused himself and stepped outside, needing a moment alone. He had always been private, compartmentalizing his personal and professional lives. Now those boundaries had dissolved. At the courthouse for a preliminary hearing, Bill encountered Paul Winters in the hallway. An unexpected collision of his carefully separated worlds. Paul looked away quickly, attempting to avoid eye contact, but Bill approached him directly. "Mr. Winters," he said, extending his hand with the same professional courtesy he would show a difficult client. "I believe we have a mutual acquaintance." Paul reluctantly shook his hand, visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. Harrison, I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say," Bill replied evenly. "I simply wanted to put a face to the spreadsheet entry." The encounter left Bill feeling strangely empowered. He had faced the man who had contributed to destroying his marriage, and had maintained his dignity. Meanwhile, Diane was experiencing the social fallout more severely. Several of their mutual friends had distanced themselves from her. Her position at the high school became uncomfortable as rumors circulated among staff and parents. The isolation she felt after Paul ended their relationship intensified as her support network contracted. Bill took no pleasure in her distress. Despite everything, he had spent half his life with this woman and couldn't simply erase the instinct to care about her well-being. When Andrew mentioned that Diane seemed really depressed, Bill suggested his son spend more time with her. "Your mother made choices I can't accept," he told Andrew, "but she doesn't deserve to be alone right now." "That's very generous of you, Dad," Andrew said, studying his father with new respect. "It's not generosity," Bill replied. "It's a simple balance sheet. 25 years of marriage counts for something, even at the end." 6 months into the separation, with the divorce proceedings moving methodically forward, Bill found himself alone in his apartment on a rare day off. The silence, once welcome after the emotional turbulence, now felt oppressive. He sat at his desk, staring at the carefully organized documents that had become the framework of his new life. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider Diane's words. "You're so contained, Bill, so measured." Had his methodical approach to life, so valuable in his profession, contributed to the emotional distance in his marriage? This question didn't excuse Diane's betrayal, but it prompted him to reassess his priorities with the same thoroughness he applied to financial audits. The next Sunday, instead of his usual brief visit with Andrew's family, Bill suggested they go hiking at a nearby state park. His son looked surprised but pleased. The day was transformative. Bill's 4-year-old granddaughter, Emma, took his hand and led him to examine interesting rocks and unusual plants. His grandson, Tyler, challenged him to climb a steep trail, laughing with delight when his normally reserved grandfather scrambled up the path. "You're different lately," Andrew observed as they rested on a scenic overlook. "More present." Bill considered this. "I'm trying to recalculate what matters," he said finally. This recalculation continued in other areas of his life. He joined a hiking group that met on Saturday mornings, discovering he enjoyed both the physical challenge and the casual companionship. He started leaving the office by 6, delegating tasks he would previously have handled personally. During a quarterly review with Elaine Mercer, a longtime client who had become something of a friend, she commented on the change. He smiled slightly. Not the divorce itself, but perhaps the reassessment it forced. Elaine hesitated, then said, "My sister Rebecca is coming to visit next month. She lost her husband last year. Smart woman, former teacher. You might enjoy meeting her." In the past, Bill would have deflected such a suggestion, citing work commitments. Instead, he found himself saying, "I think I might like that." The divorce was finalized after a year of negotiations. The settlement was equitable, with Bill retaining his firm and investments while Diane kept their house and a fair portion of their savings. The process had been less contentious than many divorces, with both parties eventually acknowledging that the marriage had ended. At Andrew's insistence, they agreed to attend family events separately for the time being. "I love you both," he told them, "but I don't want my kids sensing tension at their birthday parties." Bill understood and appreciated his son's directness, a quality he recognized from himself. Their relationship had strengthened through honest conversations about marriage, mistakes, and forgiveness. "How did you not hate Mom through all this?" Andrew asked one evening as they shared a rare scotch on Bill's apartment balcony. Bill considered the question carefully. "Hatred requires energy I needed elsewhere," he said finally, "and it wouldn't have changed anything." At work, Bill implemented changes that surprised his partners. He proposed a 4-day work week during non-tax seasons and advocated for more flexible schedules for employees with families. "Since when are you the work-life balance guru?" David asked during a partners meeting. "Since I realized efficiency shouldn't come at the cost of connection," Bill replied. "It's simply good business to value the whole person." The changes were met with enthusiasm from staff and had the unexpected benefit of attracting younger clients who appreciated the firm's progressive approach. Bill found satisfaction in this evolution, seeing it as a positive outcome of his personal reassessment. He maintained contact with Diane only when necessary, usually regarding matters concerning Andrew and the grandchildren. Their interactions were civil, but distant. Bill noticed that the pain of betrayal had gradually dulled, replaced by a kind of detached acceptance. When Diane called to inform him she had accepted a position at a private school in another district, he recognized it as her attempt to rebuild her professional life away from the gossip that had followed her. "I think that's a wise decision," he told her. "A fresh start might be good for you." "Thank you, Bill," she said, her voice carrying a hint of the warmth they once shared. "For everything." He understood she was thanking him for more than his support of her career move. For his discretion during the divorce, for not alienating her from their son, for handling the dissolution of their marriage with the same integrity he brought to all his endeavors. After hanging up, Bill realized he meant it. The balance sheet of their marriage had been settled, the accounts closed. Now they could both move forward. 18 months after discovering Diane's affair, Bill's life had found a new rhythm. His business continued to thrive under the more balanced approach he'd implemented. His hiking group had become an unexpected source of friendship, introducing him to people outside his usual professional circle. His relationship with Catherine, Elaine's widowed sister, had developed gradually. Their first meeting, a dinner arranged by Elaine, had been pleasant but unremarkable. Bill had appreciated Catherine's directness and her lack of interest in rushing into a relationship. "I was married for 30 years, she told him over coffee during their second meeting. "I'm not looking to replace my husband, but I do enjoy good company and intelligent conversation." Bill found her independence refreshing. They began seeing each other regularly, attending concerts, exploring hiking trails, enjoying quiet dinners. Catherine's background as a literature professor complemented Bill's analytical nature, introducing him to perspectives he might otherwise have missed. When Diane announced she was moving to Arizona for a fresh start, Bill was surprised to realize he felt genuine wishes for her happiness rather than resentment. He helped Andrew arrange to ship some family heirlooms to her new home and even wrote a recommendation letter for her job application at a prestigious private school. "That was generous of you," Catherine commented when he mentioned it. "Not everyone would be so gracious." "It's not about generosity," Bill explained. "It's about recognizing that even failed investments can yield unexpected returns." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "You really do see the world through a financial lens, don't you?" That expansion continued in his relationship with his grandchildren. On a sunny Saturday, Bill found himself in Andrew's backyard, helping 7-year-old Tyler build a treehouse. As they worked, Bill explained basic structural principles, turning the project into a lesson about balance and support. "See how these beams distribute the weight?" he explained, showing Tyler how to position a crossbeam. "It's like in accounting. Everything needs to balance or the whole structure becomes unstable." Tyler nodded seriously. "Is that why you and Grandma got divorced? Because things didn't balance anymore?" Bill paused, hammer in midair, struck by the child's insight. "That's a very perceptive way of looking at it," he said finally. "Sometimes the numbers just don't add up anymore, no matter how hard you try." "Yes," Bill agreed, ruffling his grandson's hair. "We're building it right from the foundation up." As they continued working, Bill reflected on how his life had recalibrated. The pain of betrayal had diminished, replaced by an appreciation for the new connections he'd formed and the deeper relationships he now cultivated with his family. He had discovered that his analytical mind, when applied to personal growth rather than just financial matters, could help him build something more meaningful than he'd had before. Later that evening, as he and Catherine walked along the riverfront near his apartment, she asked about his day with Tyler. "We built a treehouse," Bill said, "or started to, and had an unexpected conversation about balance." "It used to be," Bill replied, thinking of the careful equilibrium he'd maintained in his former life. "Now I'm more interested in growth, even when it's unpredictable." "The returns have been promising so far," Bill agreed, squeezing her hand as they continued their walk into the evening.